We have reached 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started and other people can join as we are going along. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this webinar Wednesday. My name is Sharon, and I'm with the Colorado Statewide Internet Portal Authority, your Colorado government authority, helping you get more information and services online. In today's webinar, we will learn about using human-centered design to improve public service experiences from the team at Propeller. Before we get started, please go ahead and turn on captioning if you need or desire, and note that during this webinar you are muted. If you have questions or would like to communicate with the presenters at any point during the webinar, please use the chat box or Q&A feature. We will unmute everyone at the end for any remaining questions. We'll also have some poll questions for you to answer during the presentation and a post-webinar survey, and we deeply appreciate your feedback. Please join me in welcoming our speakers Allison Torpy and Rose Barklow from Propeller, with Elise Henson and Sydney Devine from Gary Community. We appreciate their time and look forward to what they have to share. Also on the call is SIPA's Sales Operations Manager, Heather Nelson, and Operations Assistant, Sarah Fisher, if you have any questions for us. Thank you all for joining us today. And with that, I will turn it over to the Propeller team.
Great, thanks so much, Sharon. We're really happy to be here this morning to talk to you about what we think is a really important topic, human-centered design. So the title of our time together today is Designing for Impact, but really we're here to help folks sort of start to understand how to use human-centered design to improve public sector experiences. So we'll start with a quick round of introductions. My name's Allison Torpy. I'm the Managing Director for Propeller's Denver office. I'll hand it over to Rose.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. It's great to be here. My name is Rose Barklow, and I'm a human-centered design consultant in the Denver office and have over 20 years of experience in the public sector. I'll pass it over to Elise.
Hey everyone, thanks for having us. My name's Elise Henson. I am the executive director of My Friend Ben, which is a project being incubated at Gary Community Ventures, which we'll talk about in a minute. I'll pass it to Sydney.
Hi everyone, I'm Sydney Devine. I am the product manager who's been working on My Friend Ben.
Fantastic, thanks all. We're looking forward to hearing from you shortly in the presentation. So first, we're going to just do a quick introduction on Propeller for folks that aren't familiar with the firm yet. Then I'll hand it over to Rose, who will talk a bit about human-centered design. What is it? When do we use it? Things like that, as well as our philosophy and approach to utilizing it both internally at Propeller and with our clients. And then finally, as you heard from Elise and Sydney, they're going to help walk through a case study of a project that Propeller supported them on with an application called My Friend Ben. And then we'll open it up for questions, but of course, please, as always, feel free to post questions in the chat and we'll try to answer those along the way as well. Great, so a little bit about Propeller. We are going on 12 years old. We were founded in 2012 in Portland, Oregon. I actually started with the firm about 10 years ago in Portland, moved to the Denver area about 5 years ago to help start the Denver office. So I've been here for a while, and so has Propeller. We have close to 200 employees at Propeller across 5 different locations: Denver, Portland, Bay Area, Minneapolis, and Dallas. I'm really proud to say that we're women-owned. So our founder and chief strategist is female, and more than 50% of our employees are female as well. Collectively, our close to 200 employees have over 140 years of public sector experience. You can see off to the right here a list of the Colorado public sector clients we've worked with. And then just one more kind of fact about us is we really enjoy engaging with our communities. And so, last year alone, we donated close to 3,000 hours in volunteer and pro bono support. One more little Propeller slide before we dive into the meat of the presentation today. We wanted to talk really quickly about some of the public sector challenges that Propeller helps solve, in addition to human-centered design challenges. So first kind of bucket of challenges we see a lot in the industry is around digital transformation. So think vendor assessment and selection, system implementation, AI and ML, everyone's favorite topics these days, that sort of thing. The second bucket is more of the HCD bucket. So we call this customer or employee experience. So think digital accessibility, we know is a really big thing in Colorado, especially this year with the House bill coming out with the requirements for sometime in June. Personalization, e-com, design, UX, et cetera. And then thirdly, not finally, organizational effectiveness. So this is things like change management, training, capability development. Really, like oftentimes once we implement a system or a change or process optimization, how do we make sure that it sticks? How do we make sure people are doing what we want them to do in the way that we intended? And then finally, that kind of wrapping all of this together, utilizing data-driven insights. So none of this really matters if we don't know if we're doing a good job. And so how do we ensure that we have the right data, we have clean data, that we're measuring the right things? So things like data architecture, data governance, data strategy, privacy, security, that sort of thing. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rose to take us through what is human-centered design and how to use it.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. And we're actually going to start with 2 poll questions that Sharon mentioned. We just want to really know who's in the room and your experience with human-centered design. So here is the first question. On a scale of 1 to 5, how familiar are you with human-centered design? And we'll leave it up there just for a few moments. Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay. It sounds like there's some people with kind of 0 experience, and some people with, oh, I might have heard about it, I know a little bit, and a few people who are perhaps experts and have tried it at their workplace. So that's a good kind of mix of crew that we have here today. So excited to have this conversation. Okay, throw up the second poll question, if you will. So this one, if you know, you might not know the answer to this, does your workplace support a human-centered design methodology? I'm always curious about this one, especially in the public sector. Yeah, a ton of people not sure, right? You're just coming in here today to learn about human-centered design, totally understand, not sure if they're gonna kind of accept this methodology. And hopefully after you hear this presentation, you're going to go back to your workplace and say like 100%, we have to do this. I like the sometimes and absolutely is really good to see and good to hear. And I understand like how someone would respond absolutely, because human-centered design and government work go hand in hand. So thank you for answering those polls. I'm going to talk at you, I'm sorry, for about the next 15 minutes. We're going to have an opportunity for questions, a poll, break, and then we'll have another 15 minutes. But hopefully I will bring some good energy for the next 15 minutes so you all don't get distracted by other things on your computer. So our goals today are really make sure that we define human-centered design and the 3 anchors that we kind of anchor ourselves to. We understand the design cycle. We're really going to share a high-level overview of each of the design phases within that cycle. We're going to definitely share a real-world application with a case study, and I'll share some examples in my conversation, in my talking points, and then really hopefully inspire you to, again, go back to your workplace and say, we want to try this out. We want to see if this works to help us solve challenges that we're seeing. So that is our goals today. Slides may be stuck, pause, no worries. Okay. So how Propeller defines human-centered design is human-centered design puts people impacted by outcomes of design at the center of the discovery, design, and creation process. So to me, what this means is at its core, human-centered design is user-led and community-oriented, which I know is very much in alignment with kind of public sector work. And I always say human-centered design is meant for the public sector because you all are focused on the outcomes of the community. You know, how do we provide a better parking experience? How do we provide a better, you know, energy experience? How do we provide a better, you know, benefit experience? You know, you all are anchored in really understanding alongside the community how we design and create better systems and processes. So at the heart, that is what human-centered design is. And these are the 3 if you can go back 1 minute, no worries. This is kind of the 3 anchors that we have at Propeller. So first, kind of looking at that leveraging a design cycle, I always say a design cycle is action-oriented, it's deeply human, and it's experimental. You can also, in my belief, you can enter into that cycle at any point within a project, and we actually repeat this cycle over and over again as we're trying to find the right solution. My other favorite part about this design cycle is that we get started. We have that bias toward action. We fail fast and we iterate. And I know that can feel really uncomfortable in the government sector. I know when I was in kind of the public sector, I felt uncomfortable with failing fast and getting started, maybe not having all the answers. And that's why human-centered design is so different than a lot of ways that our public sector systems work currently. If we go to balancing tensions, that kind of bottom circle, I always say, like, bureaucracy is all about balancing tensions. We are not going to be able to avoid kind of the tensions that exist within large bureaucratic systems. And we have to recognize that design does not exist in isolation. It is influenced and influences by the context in which we are living in. And as facilitators of this design process, we need to explore and be comfortable kind of in the unknown and ambiguity of these tensions as we are looking to solve our challenges. And lastly, that last anchor is really about embodying the facilitator. So you may have heard the term designer. At Propeller, we have kind of really shifted away from the word designer and replaced it with the word facilitator. Because we don't want to, I think of like a university professor that might go into a community, study it, and then come out and write a research paper on whatever they learned. We don't want to have that mentality. Our mentality is to go into a community, work with the community, and facilitate a process that's going to find us the right answers. So that's why we really think of us not as designers, but as facilitators of this process. Okay, Amanda, hit it. All right, so this is our kind of Propeller's design cycle. And you may see that we actually, it's not circular, so you may be confused by the word cycle, but we like to think of this as our double diamond approach. And it is cyclical in that you can enter it at any point, and you're gonna kind of continually work through this double diamond process when you're doing a human-centered design project. So I first wanna point out that human-centered design is both divergent and convergent. And when I heard those words initially, I'm like, what are you saying? Like, you're kind of just speaking gibberish to me. And so I'm gonna like be a little dramatic with my hands here. But if you think about it, you know, what we're doing is we're diverging to in that discover phase of really understanding what is the challenge and what are we really trying to solve for. And then we narrow again, we converge to say, okay, now we know this is exactly the priority or the challenge we want to solve for. And then we again diverge to say, well, what could we potentially do? What is possible? What are all the brainstorming ideas we have? We go back out and then we come back into convergent and we say, okay, now we're going to narrow down and we're going to try this solution or we're going to prototype this model. And so we have this kind of in and out throughout the cycle. I would say this is a beautiful design in front of you. It often does not feel this crisp. It can feel complicated, and sometimes you feel like you're swirling and not really knowing where you are in the process. But that is part of human-centered design. It's going to get a little hard before we really find the solutions we're looking for. So to kind of dive a little bit deeper into each of these kind of areas, that prepare phase is really what I was talking about regarding that facilitator role. So how are you preparing as somebody who is going to do this process for how to step into an environment or an experience that may be different than your own? This is the work of really knowing who needs to be part of our design team to ensure we have the diverse thought and experiences to pull from. We want lots of different lenses, lots of different unique experiences, so we don't come in there into a design cycle with biases and assumptions. The next phase, this discover phase, I think of this as at its heart, this is research. What is truly the problem that we are thinking of trying to solve for? So this is like the research phase. Then we go into the define phase, which is the like aha moment of like, look at our research, and this is what our problem is and what we're trying to solve for. Like, hooray. Like, sometimes that can be the hardest thing to identify of like, what are we actually trying to solve? And then we go into develop. And this is where we, again, get to explore saying, now that we know the problem, now we get to brainstorm, what can we solve for? And to me, the excitement of thinking of new ways to solve old problems is really what human-centered design is, the power behind human-centered design. Like, let's try to solve these systemic problems that we've been working on for a really long time in new ways. And then lastly, deliver. That's really when we're prototyping, we're building a minimum viable product or MVP, we're piloting a project, and then we're really looking to scale. Now that we know what's viable and what might work, now let's scale it. So that's really how Propeller sees the human-centered design cycle. Awesome. And then kind of diving a little bit deeper into the facilitator role. I really think, again, this is, you're creating the environment for change, for growth, and for learning. And so you're walking into these spaces with community to really say, like, how can I learn from you all on what's happening? What are the barriers? What are the possibilities? And we, again, have that, if we don't acknowledge our assumptions and biases here, what I always say is we will continue spending money and creating programs that don't work, right? Like, if we don't come in with this lens of if we come in with the lens of I'm the expert and I know best, then again, we're going to continue to kind of hit our head against the wall around finding new solutions to old problems. And I share one kind of short example here. If we look at a design facilitator does not, and that first bullet says, allow themselves to unconsciously consider some data more valid than others. And just to share a really humbling experience for me, I was doing a project with students with intellectual disabilities for a large urban school district here in Colorado. And we're interviewing everybody, teachers, paraprofessionals, students, parents. And I didn't realize, it was unconscious, that I was valuing the data that was coming from the parents or the teachers over the data of the students and over their lived experience. And luckily I had a design team that was able to point it out to me and say, hey, Rose, like, do you recognize that you're listening to these other individuals over the students and their own lived experiences? And I had brought a bias into that space of not having a good understanding of students with intellectual disabilities. So it's really easy and it can happen to all of us. And it's just, again, having that strong team and acknowledging that we have assumptions and biases that we bring with us. All right, balancing tensions. I really find that the best way to talk through and explain the tensions that exist within human-centered design is through experiences and through kind of a case study. So the first one, when we look at the tension of establishment versus the collective. So when I was working for the Department of Public Health and Environment, I was a funder and I gave grants out to, lots of nonprofits across Colorado doing youth development work. And so we said, as an establishment, we said, your youth development programs need to look a certain way. This is how we're going to evaluate them. We kind of had a very designed box for what those programs look like. So that would be on the one end of the establishment. On the other end, on the collective end, we could have said, hey, here's $50,000. You all know what's best for your community around youth development, and we trust you. You build it. You tell us how you're going to evaluate it, and then share with us your success, right? So that's the two extremes, really prescribed an established solution to a problem versus really checking in with the community and the collective on what's going to work best. So those are those kind of polar opposites. The next one, prescriptive versus ethnographic. So an example I have here is I was working with that same large urban school district, and I was working on a physical activity kind of pilot program and to bring more physical activity into schools. And so somebody said to me, like, we're going to bring more physical activity into our schools by adding more recess. So that's a very prescriptive solution to a problem. Versus in the ethnographic side of this tension, we could ask ourselves, how might we increase physical activity for students during the school day? And that doesn't narrow our thinking. We then get to say, oh, perhaps it's in the hallways, perhaps it's during math class, maybe it's before school, maybe it's after school, maybe it is recess, right? So we're not narrowing our solution right off the bat. And then lastly, future versus present. So I would like to think of this one on a current project I'm on right now regarding education and AI, right? So the present, we have an education system. We know that AI is coming and it's going to impact our system, but we're going to design for what we currently know and the system we currently have around education. Or thinking about the future and saying, let's design for something that is an unknown. We have no idea how AI is going to impact education, but let's acknowledge that that's happening and how do we think and look forward. And I just want to be clear, like there is no right or wrong with these tensions, but especially in the public sector, it is really important to recognize that they exist. And it's going to become, these are tensions that make it hard sometimes for actual implementation of the work. All right, so this kind of slide for me is just like why I love human-centered design. Because if we do it well, we find the sweet spot and actually create a solution that works, which I know is what everybody here wants to do. But if we don't ask ourselves, what are our customers and their unmet needs? How might we design technology or services to meet those needs? And how might we find value for customers? Then again, we're going to end up with a solution no one will use or a solution that can't be built. And so this is why I believe human-centered design gets us to that sweet spot. All right, that was a lot, I know, of me talking at you. So I want to provide an opportunity now for another poll question, as well as open up for any questions that may have popped up as I was talking. So first we'll start with the poll question. So out of the 3 fundamental skills anchors I just talked about, design cycle, embodying the facilitator, balancing tensions, which do you think will be easiest to implement at your workplace? Ah, yeah, no surprise there that balancing tensions would be one of the hardest to implement, right? Again, we exist in a governmental system here for those who are on the call, and you already know and acknowledge that is the real struggle sometimes with bringing in new solutions to an old problem. Yeah, any questions? I don't know if any have come up. I can't see them, but if not, I will continue on.
Nothing in the chat so far, Rose.
Okay, awesome. Okay, you guys got another 10 minutes of me talking and then hopefully some questions. Okay, so the power of preparation. So I'm someone who doesn't believe that humans can multitask very well. So I'm actually not going to talk at you for about 20 seconds so you can read this slide. And then I will share kind of my thoughts on this slide and share some examples. So I'm just going to pause for 15, 20 seconds. All right. Okay. Hopefully you got a chance to kind of digest this slide. So what I want to say to this kind of the point around the power of preparation, again, that first part of that double diamond cycle is this is where we're really recognizing the impact that a facilitator or a designer has. We're really kind of asking ourselves, what data am I looking at and with what lens? Am I valuing some data more than others, like I was? Who's on my team and what are their roles? This is really where we get to think about historical context. So when you're thinking about the challenge you're trying to tackle, like what is kind of the historical context that challenge lives within? We're looking at systemic challenges, saying, okay, what are the systems that exist that have gotten us to this point where this challenge exists? And the example I'll share for this slide is I was working at a school-based health clinic here in Denver, and we had a super high rate of clinic no-shows with our teenagers. And so when we started to do the human-centered design process and I was interviewing a lot of the adults in the clinic, all they could say was, you know, these teenagers, right? They never pay attention, they never follow through, like, let's blame the teenagers over and over and over again. And when I actually talked to teenagers, they were like, if you guys just sent me a reminder text, I would come. Like, you guys don't send me a text. And so if we had only listened to the adults in the room, then maybe we would have, dismissed the teenagers and closed the clinic, let's say, in a very dramatic kind of fashion. But when we actually listened to the teenagers, we piloted and prototyped a text kind of reminder system. And we got to 90% of students showing up for their appointments. So it's an example of if we had paused and not really said, we want to make sure we're interviewing a really wide range of people, we would not have gotten to a solution that actually worked. And now that text reminder system is scaled across the entire metro area for our school-based health clinics. So there is a lot of power in the preparation. And I saw a note that someone says a delicate step. And I agree, like this is a space where we really want to take time to understand who we are and how we are looking at this problem or challenge. All right, the curiosity in discovery. Again, I'm going to give you all about 15 seconds to read this. Okay, so the curiosity in discovery. So when we talk about discovery, this is, again, when I referenced earlier, this is the research phase. So we're working with the community, whoever we are defining as community, to gather data. Maybe we're conducting qualitative one-on-one interviews is a really good way to do research, or we're putting together focus groups, or we're even observing people in their day-to-day habits, right? Those are some examples of how you can kind of discover, as well as doing kind of that paper research, right? When we think about what I talked about previously, those root cause or historical context or systemic challenges, we're also doing some just good old-fashioned research to understand and discover how we got to this place. The term I really like here is we're chasing our curiosity and doing everything we can to ensure we have enough data to really get a good picture of the experiences that folks have in the context of the design challenge. And here I can guarantee I was not a stellar science student, but in this phase, I do like to use hypothesis. And this is really where we ask ourselves, like, we believe that blank, our guess on why this certain behavior is happening. So if we, do a certain action, then we will see X result. So I kind of love these like hypothesis sandwich kind of equations or questions here, because that's going to help us understand, man, like, what are we really looking at? What's our hypothesis of what's going on with this challenge? And my story I would like to share here is, I think I shared already around this physical activity project I had. So increasing physical activity in a large urban school district. So I went to a school and I talked to the principal and she said, we just need more equipment. Just give us $1,000 and we'll buy more equipment and we will increase physical activity in our school. Okay, cool, sounds like a good idea. I'm gonna also go observe recess. I'm curious what recess looks like. Are kids actually moving? Are they just sitting against the wall? What's happening? So I observed several recess. I don't know the plural of recess there. Recess. I observed kids playing. And as I was observing them, I see kids kicking soccer balls and throwing basketballs over the fence onto like the sidewalk and kind of into the streets. And I'm kind of like, what's happening here? What's going on? And it turns out that kids wanted to play not only at school, but also at home. So they had a great strategy of kind of kicking the ball over the fence. When school got out, they would go get the ball and then they would have a ball to play with at home. So this was a good problem to have, right? Kids wanted to move. The bad problem was they were stealing. And so we had to figure out how to, fix that challenge. And so one of the things that I'll share with you what we prototyped a little bit later, but that's an example of we're chasing our curiosity. Like, okay, like a lot of people have a lot of ideas on solutions, but it's not limiting ourselves to what other people's solutions are. It's really saying, I want to be curious about everything that exists right now, and I'm not going to stop with my discovery. All right. Okay. So the beauty in this phase, the defining the priority, is the ability to take complex and potentially massive amounts of data that you've just discovered and whittle it down to key insights that can drive solutions without losing the nuance. And it is difficult because it's, as I said, it's super fun to discover and be curious about why this problem exists. And now you have all this data, and we're really trying to say, we want to understand the problem. The tool that I really use here is how might we questions. So now that we have kind of a lot of data, now it's like, how might we blink? How might we create an app for X? And so that's really the tool that I think is easiest to use, especially at the beginning as you're learning human-centered design. Again, I like equations or simple sentences to help. And so how might we blank is the tool that I use here. I want to really caution us here around scope, and especially looking at public sector work. I know that I always tried to solve all problems all the time, and sometimes it would get unwieldy. And so there's a way, using how might we questions, that we can be clear about the scope in which we are kind of tackling a challenge and not try to do everything all at once, because then we get spread too thin. So I'm going to share an example here of kind of the Goldilocks theory of how might we questions. So the first one is, and I'm going to reference that previous example I had regarding students with intellectual disabilities. So the first example is, how might we create a curriculum for students with intellectual disabilities to learn about their health? So decent how might we question, but I've already limited the solution to curriculum. I've said, how might we create a curriculum? And so now the solution that we're going to try can only be about curriculum. So it's a little narrow. So on the other extreme, how might we disrupt the education system so students with intellectual disabilities can learn about their health? Well, I mean, I don't know about you all, but I know disrupting an education system can be a very unwieldy challenge. And so probably not going to be successful in that. So that's like too broad. So kind of that happy space that we're looking for is, how might we create an environment for students with intellectual disabilities to learn about their health? So we're creating an environment, which means it still gives us space to play, to really say, here's how we're going to create that environment and what we're going to do in that environment. And it's not limiting us yet, and it's not too broad. So that's an example of, let's be clear about our scope in this phase. All right, okay, 15 seconds, collective creativity in development. Okay, this is probably my favorite phase because this is the phase where we get to say, like, what could be? Like, we've spent a lot of time, and sometimes it feels like painful time to really get to this place of like, here's where we get to understand what the solutions could possibly be to solve the challenge. So to me, this is the really exciting phase, and it's the first moment where you and the participants get to play with solutions to the challenge. Things that might ease frustration or revolutionize how the participants interact with something. It's the first time where we can really feel a shift from the ambiguous to the real and tangible. So remember at the very beginning, I said, although that double diamond is very beautiful, it often can not be quite so simple. And up to this point, we've been living in a space of ambiguity. And this is really where it starts to say, like, we get to design something that we feel like is really going to work. So back to my physical activity example. So once we saw what students were doing, one of the brainstorm ideas we had was to create an equipment library. So where students could check out equipment, take it home, return it after 2 weeks, and then we would have equipment at home and we would have equipment on the recess field. And so that was a brainstorm that came out of this phase of like, what could we develop? And so this again is like, this is, I think, often where people go to immediately. We have this challenge and then we go to brainstorm and how can we solve it? And we skip all the other phases, that prepare, discover, define phase. But we need those other phases to be able to develop solutions that will actually work. All right, last one, deliver through iteration. A quick 15 seconds here. Okay, so really this phase is we get to test all of the work and see if we got a good start to our eventual solution. The key here is we get to begin the iteration cycle again, but we are now more narrow. We're doing this iteration cycle just on one solution. So we're again observing individuals using our solution or our MVP. We're asking them questions, we're getting feedback. Then we're going back to the drawing board with the design team to understand how we can make changes to meet the community needs. So again, this is the typical prototype MVP. We're really saying, here's our first attempt, and we have to be clear, it's our first attempt. And now we're going to go through this whole cycle again to really understand what we need to fix and continue to iterate on. I will definitely say it can be tempting to throw solutions over the fence here and say, all right, my job is done. We got a minimum viable product. And I want to acknowledge, especially in the public sector, implementation is always, always, always hard because of those tensions that come into play. And I saw that as well with the poll that you all kind of filled out, that balancing tensions is a reality, and human-centered design isn't going to solve that reality, but it is a way to articulate and really prove to executives that the solution that you are designing for is accurate because you've done all of this work with the community. So lastly, a question that I often, there's 5 questions I often ask myself, especially in that deliver phase, but honestly throughout human-centered design. And this actually comes from improvement science, but I think it's very simple and a very easy thing to just have in your pocket at any phase of this cycle. So I ask myself, what's working? What's not working? For whom? Maybe it's working for rural Coloradans, but not urban Coloradans. Under what conditions? Is it only working when there's a crisis? Is it only working when there's not a crisis? Is it only working when internet works, et cetera? And how do we know, right? This goes back to, I think Allison talked about data at the very beginning of something that Propeller does. Like, we need to know if something's working or not working, and how are we gonna learn that? So this is, again, some 5 simple questions that I like to ground myself in throughout this cycle and process. So thankfully, I am done talking. Hopefully you got some good nuggets out of what I just spoke to. And I'm really excited to kind of share or introduce Gary Community Ventures and how we applied human-centered design for something called My Friend Ben. And I'm gonna pass it to Elise.
Great. Thanks so much, Rose. So I will do just like a quick introduction of Gary and this project, which is called My Friend Ben, and then I'll pass it to my colleague Sydney, who will walk through the process that we actually undertook in partnership with Propeller and the problem that it helped us solve. So just to start really quickly with Gary, if folks are not familiar, we are a Denver-based philanthropic organization that's focused on increasing opportunity for Colorado kids and families. We focus on early childhood, youth success, essentially kids up to age 18, and then family economic mobility. And we do that in a few different ways. We do sort of traditional grant making, advocacy and policy work, impact investing in for-profit solutions, and then we have what we call our ventures team, which is the team that Sydney and I sit on, where we are actually piloting and testing and using versions of human-centered design in the way that Rose just described to listen to our community about challenges that are out there that are impacting or constraining opportunity for kids and families, and then piloting and testing solutions to that. So you can go to the next slide. So the specific project that we will share today and walk through how we improved in partnership with Propeller is called My Friend Ben. The opportunity here is that we estimate there's a $500 million in publicly funded benefits and tax credits that are left on the table every year by eligible Coloradans, and those are resources and supports that have a robust evidence base in terms of their ability to reduce poverty, to get families financially stable and on the path to economic mobility. So we knew that academically. The reason that we actually undertook this project and built this tool is that we had a group of about 100 families that we were in touch with over the course of a year as sort of a family advisory group. They were getting some cash assistance from the foundation, and we were talking to them about all the things that Gary was up to and getting feedback on our ideas and our projects and things that we might do. And at the time, we were not doing anything that was around access to public benefits. Gary in the past has done some work around outreach for folks to take advantage of tax credits, but that was a while ago. And so right now we weren't doing any of that work. And then in these conversations where we're asking about after school tutoring and all sorts of other projects that we were up to, we also asked families, what else is going on in your life? What's promising? What's feeling challenging? And over and over and over again, we heard that accessing the social safety net and the types of programs that they felt could be helpful to their families was time consuming. It was confusing. It was ultimately frustrating because trying to figure out across a bunch of different programs and really complex eligibility rules, what they might be eligible for, what they should spend their time actually applying for, felt hugely frustrating and like a real barrier. And so we have an in-house tech team as part of our ventures work, and we felt like there might be a technology solution here. So just really at a high level, what this tool is, it's a free online tool. It can be used by case managers or navigators or by the public themselves directly. It's essentially what we call a benefits screener. So it takes about 6 minutes. People answer a set of really basic questions about their household, things like income, number of people, common expenses like rent or childcare. And at the end, they get a personalized benefits report that shows from over 40 public benefit programs, tax credits, and nonprofit programs that are specific to Colorado, which of those they're likely eligible for everyone that they're eligible for, what's the cash value to their specific household based on the how they answered the questions, and then how to apply. They can either apply online and we'll link them off to the relevant application, or we can connect them with a local navigator who can help with that part. And the whole point of this project is that we're increasing access to benefits for folks who are already eligible but aren't getting them because they're not aware that they're eligible, or it feels like it takes too much time to get all the way through, so they're not even bothering with the process. So this takes it from hours of research that can feel really frustrating to 6 minutes that feels really friendly and approachable. But the last thing I'll say before I hand it to Sydney is that the whole point of this is that you get to your results page and you go ahead and take action. You actually apply for a benefit. You actually receive reduced expenses or cash value for your household. So if people get to the results page and they don't go on and do that, we haven't really met our goal. We might have increased awareness of what's out there, but we are not actually delivering financial value to families. So that particular page of the tool and phase of the process is extremely important to our ultimate impact. And that's the piece that we worked with Propeller to really get better. So with that, I will pass it to Sydney to just walk through what that process looked like.
Excuse me. Thank you so much for framing all of that, Elise. Like Elise said, the whole point of this is to make sure families are actually going through it and applying. So in keeping with our theme of human-centered design, we actually heard from families that this results page was not actually all that helpful at first. So enter the lovely team at Propeller. As we dove into the discover and the define phases of human-centered design with Propeller, we really wanted to solve a core set of issues that we were already hearing from families were pain points with the results page. One, we really wanted to make sure families were able to easily understand how they could save a copy of their results for themselves. We wanted to improve filter functionality, specifically around citizenship, as we are not collecting that information, but want to give families with especially mixed citizenship households the ability to understand what might actually be available to them. We also wanted to make it more intuitive to learn about each program. And we wanted to clarify the difference between a long-term benefit and a near-term program that families would be able to see on the results page. The Propeller team was wonderful. They took all of our issues and went into the develop phase, where they came back to us with 2 different versions of low fidelity wireframes that we could test with users. And this was probably my absolute favorite part of this process. We actually ran a session, both virtual and in person, with 12 individuals to go through both of these wireframes, as well as the original results page, to see what users thought of the new designs. We tested both of these versions. We watched users interact with the pages as they were asked to do specific tasks, to see if we were really solving for the issues we wanted to solve for. The results of those user testing sessions, we actually did find out that by moving the Save My Results to the top of the page, users actually noticed it, and we were able to solve for that issue. Unfortunately, this first round of user testing did not solve for the filtering function that we wanted, nor did it solve for the near-term help section, excuse me, that we wanted to address. So back to the drawing board, Propeller team did come up with an updated wireframe based off of user feedback. We did another round of testing with users. Again, just fabulous feedback from being able to talk to someone who's actually clicking through it for the first time. And we did find in our second round of users testing that our filter did pass what we wanted users to be able to do with it. And they were also able to understand how they could easily apply and get more details on the benefit itself, as well as, again, still save a copy of their results. Results of our work with Propeller, these changes to our results page should actually be going live in the next couple of weeks, and our team is so excited to be able to launch it and hopefully have a more user-friendly results page with a better call to action, so that users can actually get the benefits that they're eligible for. We expect the impact of this to increase user applications for actual benefits. We hope that more users will actually return to their results and use it as a guidepost of how they can apply for benefits and which ones to apply for. We also hope that this will help users feel more prepared as they prepare to apply for a benefit. One of the additions to the results page is going to be a checklist of documents that users should gather before they actually apply or hit the application button for a benefit. We are also hoping this will increase the awareness between the long-term and the near-term benefits with the tabs at the top now. So overall, hoping that this redesign helps increase access to low-income families in Colorado. And we're really grateful for all of the work that Propeller did on it.
Great. Well, thank you, Sydney, Elise, and Rose for walking us through all of that really interesting information. We hope that everyone on the call learned a lot with us here today, and thank you for answering our poll questions as well. We learned a bit from you in terms of where folks stand in the human-centered design world in Colorado today. So again, in summary, we hope you learned what is human-centered design and what are the three anchors. We hope you now understand at least how Propeller defines the human-centered design cycle. We of course walked through each phase, and Rose told some really sort of poignant stories about how each of them has been applied. And then finally, Elise and Sydney walked us through this real-world application with the My Friend Ben application, and how we sort of iterated and learned and tested and refined, and ultimately are hopefully having a quite successful application. So we'd like to kind of open the floor to questions. If anyone has any questions for us, or really we have a question actually for you, which is how might you apply HCD to redefine how you plan and deliver your services? You can drop some comments in the chat, or Sharon, if you can pop to the next slide. We'd like to invite everyone to continue the conversation with us. We're really passionate about this stuff. We're assuming that since you joined the workshop or the webinar, you are as well. So we'd like to invite everyone to join us for this workshop in a couple of weeks, Tuesday, February 13th. There will be breakfast, 8:30 to 11 a.m. In our office. And we'll just do a deeper dive on everything we talked about today. We might get to answer that question that we posed to the group in a more kind of conversational setting. And again, just sort of start to think about this stuff in a bit of a deeper, more personalized way. I think I saw Jillian just posted the link. There's of course the QR code here on the screen that you can take a picture of with your phone. She posted the link in the chat. Sharon, I believe, will be sending some more information for folks who attended to register after this as well. And that actually concludes our session. So if there are any questions, like I said, we're happy to take those now, or otherwise we'll give folks a few minutes back on their Wednesday morning.
And everyone should be able to unmute or raise their hand if you want to ask anything. Let us know what you think.
I want to say thank you for your time. My name is Angela Engels. I'm a Veterans Cemetery Administrator on the Western Slope. So I work for Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. We are currently looking forward to a couple different projects in which this process will be deeply considered because we do what we do. We deal with a lot of grieving people, and emotions, especially grief, require human-centered design. So I thank you for the introduction. I will be delving deeper. I certainly wish I was on the Eastern Slope to attend the additional workshop with you, but I certainly will be delving deeper. But I do appreciate the introduction and appreciate the work that you do. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. And while you won't be able to attend the workshop in person, we get that. We'd be happy to hop on a call and chat through some of the ideas that you're kind of bouncing around in your head. I know it can always be just helpful to have a friendly face and thought partner to think through some of these really challenging things. So I'll post my contact information in the chat here, and feel free to reach out directly. We'll be happy to talk more. And Rose, I think Rose should do the same.
Thank you. I appreciate it, ladies.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Oh. No? All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Now that we've finished up the questions, please do not hesitate to contact any of us with any other questions that may come up after this ends. If you want to learn more or get a quote, go to sipa.colorado.gov to register for our future webinars that are coming up. We have one on February 14th with NTT Data and February 28th with Tyler, Colorado, March 13th with CapTech, and April 10th with Optiv. We've got other services that we can hopefully help you procure to help you with your information and services online for your residents and constituents. Things like cybersecurity and accessibility and all kinds of many more. We've got our monthly newsletters if you aren't already subscribed. So do that, because that's where we announce our upcoming webinars and share a lot of great information. And if you want to return to this webinar specifically to watch it again or share it with a colleague, we'll be getting this up on a YouTube channel, so be checking for that. And I want to say thank you again to the Propeller team for this great presentation and information they shared. It was fantastic. We want to keep making these webinars as relevant and informational as possible for you. So we would deeply appreciate if you could take a minute or two to fill out the brief 3-question survey that we'll be sending out after this. Thank you all for being here this morning, and make it a fantastic day.